On the 25th of March 1911, smoke began to rise above Washington Square. Inside the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, hundreds of immigrant girls stitched blouses for pennies, unaware that within minutes, their workplace would become a coffin. Flames spread, doors locked, and the city watched in horror as bodies fell from the 9th floor. This was not just a fire, it was a betrayal, and it changed America forever. Welcome back to the hidden past, where forgotten stories rise again. At the dawn of the 20th century, New York was a city of dreams. Immigrants poured in from Italy, Russia, and Eastern Europe, chasing survival and hope. Many were teenage girls, some barely 14, who found work in garment factories. Inside the Triangle factory, the air was thick with dust and the endless hum of sewing machines. Rows of wooden tables stretched across the floor, each crowded with workers, stitching blouses called shirtwaists. For 12 hours a day, they bent over their machines, earning barely $2 a week. To outsiders, the factory looked like opportunity, but for those inside, it was a prison, disguised as progress. The Triangle factory was ruled by Max Planck and Isaac Harris, men celebrated as the shirtwaist kings. Their empire was built on the backs of immigrant girls, yet they treated those workers as disposable. Doors were locked to prevent theft. Bathroom breaks were timed. Wages were cut without warning. Fire escapes were flimsy, ignored in favor of profit. To the owners, every stitch meant money, and every worker was just another machine. Blanc and Harris grew rich, while their employees lived in poverty. Their greed created a factory that looked modern from the outside, but inside, it was a trap, waiting to ignite. From the outside, the ISK building looked modern, tall, strong, safe, but inside the Triangle factory, it was a trap. Wooden tables crowded every floor, piles of cloth stacked high, all dripping onto machines. The air was thick with dust, and the only protection against fire was a few buckets of water. Girls sat shoulder to shoulder, bent over sewing machines for 12 hours a day. Their backs ached, their fingers bled, yet silence filled the room. The fire escape was flimsy, the doors were locked, and no one imagined how quickly this place could turn into a furnace. The factory was not just a workplace, it was a cage disguised as progress. It was 4:40 p.m., the end of a long Saturday shift. The girls were tired, their fingers raw from sewing. Then, in a pile of fabric scraps, a single spark appeared. Maybe a match, maybe a cigarette. Within seconds, flames leapt across the room, feeding on cloth, dust, and oil. Smoke thickened, choking lungs. Workers rushed to elevators, but they jammed under the weight of desperate hands. The fire escape twisted and collapsed. Bodies crashed to the street below, and the doors, locked from the outside, refused to open. What began as a spark had become a storm. The factory was no longer a workplace. It was a furnace. Inside the factory, chaos ruled. Girls screamed, pounding on locked doors, choking in smoke. Some rushed to elevators, but they jammed. Others tried the fire escape, but it twisted and collapsed. Trapped, many climbed to the windows, forced to choose between burning alive or jumping. Outside, crowds gathered in shock. They looked up and saw young girls clinging to ledges, their dresses catching fire. Some leapt together, holding hands, refusing to die alone. Firefighters stretched nets, but bodies tore through them. The city stood frozen, powerless, as grief turned into horror before their eyes. When alarms rang, New York's firefighters rushed to the scene. Their ladders scraped the walls of the ISK building, but they reached only the 6th floor, far below the burning 9th. Nets were stretched, but bodies tore through them. Hoses sprayed, but the flames roared higher, feeding on cloth, dust, and oil. The rescuers stood helpless, watching lives slip away before their eyes. They had come to save, but their tools were powerless against the scale of the disaster. In that moment, the city realized this was not just a fire. It was a catastrophe beyond control. In less than 20 minutes, the flames had done their work. The Triangle factory stood in eerie silence, its rooms filled with ash and broken machines. The cries were gone. Outside, the streets were lined with bodies, covered hastily with sheets. Families wandered through the chaos, clutching photographs, searching for daughters and sisters who would never return. The building still stood tall against the skyline, but inside, it had become a grave. The silence was heavier than the fire itself, a silence that carried grief, anger, and the weight of betrayal. New York was drowned in mourning. Families lined the streets outside morgues, clutching photographs, hoping to recognize the faces of their daughters and sisters. Coffins were carried through crowded neighborhoods, each one a symbol of dreams cut short. Churches overflowed with grief. Mothers wept over coffins too small. Fathers stood silent, broken by loss. In immigrant communities, the tragedy was felt like a wound to the heart. Entire families had lost their only source of income, their only hope for survival. The funerals became more than private sorrow. They became public cries for justice. Thousands gathered to honor the dead, their tears mixing with anger. The city had witnessed horror, but now it was forced to confront the unbearable silence of grief. In the days after the fire, New York's newspapers exploded with headlines. The New York Times called it the worst workplace disaster in the city's history. Photographs of broken bodies and shattered families spread across the nation, shocking readers everywhere. Journalists described locked doors, collapsing fire escapes, and the sight of young girls leaping from windows. Editorials thundered with anger, demanding justice and accountability. The fire was no longer seen as an accident. It was betrayal born of greed. Every headline, every photograph, every article added fuel to the outrage. The grief of families had become the anger of thousands. The city could no longer remain silent. In December 1911, the owners of the Triangle factory, Max Blanc and Isaac Harris, were brought to trial. The courtroom overflowed with survivors, grieving families, and journalists eager to witness justice. Testimonies revealed locked doors, broken fire escapes, workers trapped with no way out. But the defense argued the fire was an accident, something no one could have predicted. Despite the evidence, despite the voices of survivors, the jury acquitted Blanc and Harris. They walked free, untouched by punishment, while families buried their daughters. The verdict shocked the city. For many, it was proof that wealth and power could silence justice. The fire had taken lives, but the trial revealed something darker, a system that protected the rich and abandoned the poor. On the 5th of April 1911, New York City witnessed one of the largest funeral marches in its history. More than 100,000 people filled the streets, carrying banners, photographs, and the memory of the dead. Workers, families, and union leaders walked side by side, their footsteps echoing with grief and anger. The march was not silent. Voices rose in chants, demanding justice, demanding safety, demanding dignity for workers. Immigrant communities, once ignored, now stood united. Their cries shook the city, forcing politicians and businessmen to confront the truth. The fire was not just tragedy, it was betrayal. By 1913, sweeping reforms followed: strict fire codes, mandatory inspections, sprinklers, and laws limiting hours. The sacrifice of 146 workers had reshaped America. Their voices, once silenced, now echoed through every unlocked door and every safe escape. The Triangle fire ended in silence, but its echoes never faded. The faces of 146 workers were lost to time, yet their sacrifice reshaped America. Every unlocked door, every sprinkler, every inspection carries their memory. They were not just victims of a fire, they were martyrs of justice. Their story reminds us that progress is written in sacrifice, and that the hidden past still burns within the present. This was not just history, it was a warning, carved in fire, and now it belongs to you. If you believe these forgotten stories must be remembered, join us, subscribe to The Hidden Past, and keep history alive.